Greetings, everybody. Chris Hislop from the Montana World Affairs Council, and welcome to International Careers Week. We go all around this state, bringing the world to Montana and Montana to the world. And one of the most common questions we get from students and people everywhere to our expert speakers is, how did you get the job that you have? And so in order to answer that question for people around Montana, we've created International Careers Week. It's Monday through Thursday this week, 8:30 to 2 p.m. We are bringing a dizzying array of international experts across an extraordinary range of professions to help Montanans, particularly students, understand what kind of opportunities are in the world for people interested in an international career. Some of those experts are here in Montana, some are across the United States, as our friend is this morning, and some are living around the world. So you won't want to miss this. You can check our website to get the full schedule. If you've missed any of these, they're all available on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and have a look there. Before I introduce our guest, I just want to thank our very generous sponsors at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, Qatar Foundation International, High Stakes Foundation, and the Longview Foundation. Now, let me welcome the guest for this event. This is Craig Cangemi. He's a senior program officer who oversees Qatar Foundation International's Arab Societies and Cultures program. In this role, he develops and implements professional development and grant opportunities for primary and secondary educators throughout the United States. So teachers out there, listen up. To develop a better understanding of the Middle East and Arab world and to provide effective strategies for teaching about the region in the classroom. Craig joined QFI in 2015. Prior to that, he served as a federal management consultant after 3 years of managing a diverse portfolio of research and development grants in the Middle East on behalf of the U.S. Department of State and Department of Energy at CRDF Global. Craig, welcome to International Careers Week. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. And thank you to the Montana World Affairs Council for not only having me for all the wonderful work that you guys do in the state of Montana. We've been happy to have been working with you guys for at least the past 5 years, and I'm really grateful to be here. And yeah, thank you for that introduction. That makes me sound a lot more esteemed than I probably am.
Come now, Craig. You're very esteemed, and we do want to say, if I could just interrupt quickly in full transparency, the Qatar Foundation, as I've said, is a very generous and longtime sponsor of ours. They help us bring our programs to schools across Montana. So as I said, teachers and students, listen up. There's some very interesting opportunities for you. Sorry to interrupt, Craig. You go right ahead.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of introduce myself in terms of what I do now, and then give you sort of a little overview of where I'm from and how I arrived here. As Chris mentioned, I am a senior program officer at Qatar Foundation International, or QFI. We are a not-for-profit organization based in Washington, D.C. I actually am remote, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I have actually been with QFI since 2015, so for about 8 years now. So it's been a wonderful place to work. And as Chris mentioned, I particularly specifically work with K through 12 teachers throughout the United States, also now in the United Kingdom and Germany, providing professional development programs and trainings for educators to learn more about the region at a deeper and more nuanced level than we might see in the media or in textbooks. And then we also work with organizations such as Montana World Affairs Councils and also individual teachers to provide grants or funding for teachers to get their own professional development or attend programs such as this in person, or to travel to the region and learn more firsthand. And then also on the other side of things, as you'll see through the title, Opening Doors to Arabic, we also work with Arabic language educators and Arabic students throughout the world, helping provide high quality instruction in Arabic at the middle and high school level, which is a newer trend that's been growing through the United States over the past decade or so. Prior to that was mostly focused at the university level. which is where I started my journey. So a little background about me. I am from rural North Carolina. Grew up next to pretty much nothing but a bunch of chicken farms and fields, where the concept of international probably didn't exist in my vocabulary for a really long time. The thought of learning a foreign language or traveling the world or working in an international capacity was never something that was ever on my radar until I was actually in high school. And this is part of why I love working with teachers, because as a result of some really awesome teachers that I had, particularly oddly enough, my calculus teacher exposed me to international politics by helping me go to Washington, D.C. for a week while I was a 15-year-old. And while I was there, I was in a program for a week learning about global studies and global politics. And from that moment on, I knew where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And I always knew that I wanted to be in Washington, D.C. to make positive change in the world. And so I sought myself to get there any way that I could. So sort of fast forwarding, I went to school at Davidson College, small school in North Carolina. For those of you who follow professional basketball, that's where Stephen Curry went to. So that'll be my little plug there for the school. And after my first semester as a freshman, I came home and I was at Walmart. And in the checkout line, I bumped into my high school Spanish teacher. And he asked me how everything was going. And I said, oh, college is really fun, et cetera, et cetera. And he asked me what I was studying. And he said to me, if you have the opportunity, study Arabic. And I said, well, I don't even know what Arabic is, and he said, well, you know what, just look into it. If you have the chance, do it. And I said, okay, whatever, and I checked out and said goodbye, gave him a hug. And then oddly enough, when I went to sign up for my sophomore year class, Arabic, Introduction to Arabic was there. And I said, well, he said to take it. I'm young. I signed up for it. And so I started out with there were 30 of us. And 3 years later, there were only 3. And so I stuck through it for 3 years and I absolutely fell in love with the language. And by falling in love with the language, it really kind of just set the trajectory for my life personally and professionally. If you're not familiar with Arabic, I really encourage you to hop on YouTube, check out some things about the language. If you've not really explored the Middle East, definitely just, again, go check out some YouTube videos, check out QFI's website, qfi.org, and you can learn a little bit about that. But when I was in school, I received a grant to go to Jordan for the summer and study Arabic intensively. And when I was there, I was able to put that language to use, learn more about the culture in the region, meet people, use that language to talk. And it really became something that was alive to me. And I became even more excited and interested and wanting to really master the language, and tried and became kind of convinced that that was really what I wanted to do and use in my life, in my future, and then also in my future career. So it sort of just started to direct me there. When I graduated, I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't find a job. It was pretty tough in the mid 2000s to find a job right out of school. And I was fortunate enough to receive a scholarship to go back to the school in Jordan where I was. And I lived there for a year. And it was the most amazing experience of my life. I was able to travel throughout the entire region. I've been thankful and grateful enough to have traveled to almost every country in the Middle East. And while I was there, I met a lot of different people in a lot of different capacities, whether it be actual Jordanians who lived on the ground or a lot of expatriates who were there working. And that's sort of where I started to learn about different career options and what was available out there, both in the region or even at home in the United States. And I can talk a little bit about that at the end with Chris wants to ask me a little bit more about what types of careers are out there for those who are interested in Arabic or also just the Middle East in general. So when I came back, I had this idea as a young person, really wanted to do something interesting. I wanted to get into intelligence. I thought it was cool to use my Arabic to be the next James Bond. And so I tried to look different ways going into the CIA or through the military. And I knew I wanted to work for the government because I thought that was where I could make real change. And after getting to that point nearly, I decided, you know what, it wasn't for me. And I wanted to try to do something a little bit different for my own personal reasons. And I wanted to be able to make change on the ground for the better for those who lived in the region, especially after being there and actually seeing how things are and having that region, those people, the language and everything be humanized. And that was the most important part for me being there, was making those human connections. And as I said, that's through the title, is opening doors through Arabic. That was the biggest door that was open, were those connections. And so I took a step back and I said, how can I really work with people on the ground? What can I do to help make their lives better? And so, I had the opportunity on a variety of capacities. I was able to volunteer working with refugees who had resettled in the United States, helping them get set up in America, finding new jobs, helping them learn English by using my Arabic. And that was really incredible to meet people who were having to start over as a result of things out of their control. And then as a result of working with refugees, I wanted to do research more on refugees. So I ended up at a think tank doing research on the refugee crises that was happening in Syria. I was able to work alongside experts and learn so much about that. And then take that to, as Chris mentioned, to working for an organization that implemented State Department programs. And that was where I first started being able to use my Arabic in and of itself in my career, working with university educators in different countries, in Iraq and in Egypt and Jordan, and actually getting to use my Arabic to communicate with them, to understand their needs, and working with them to actually improve their capabilities to teach, bringing up the infrastructure there, especially in Iraq after the war had ended. And after a little while working for the government, I decided to take a step back from that and from the Middle East for a little while, just to try something new. But after a year, I missed it so much. I missed using my Arabic. I missed interacting with people from all over the world. So I had this opportunity through a friend to get to know QFI, or Qatar Foundation International. And I wanted to get back in the game, so to speak, as they asked me during my interview there. And when I first started there, all I knew was that I would get to use Arabic, and I would get to talk to people about the Middle East. And I thought that would be really exciting. And what came to happen over the past 8 years is that I have been able to meet and work with educators all over the United States to help expose them and their students to this beautiful, beautiful region and these wonderful peoples and this deep, rich culture and history. And hopefully with the goal of helping students such as myself, who came from chicken farm land, to know more about that region before they were in college and before they just got a grant and went there and had no idea what they were doing. And really get a sense of what it's like and what people are like there, and understand a little bit more and bring it back home. And that was what was most important to me. And I've clearly, after 8 years, I still love it. And working with teachers and students as well, and seeing the knowledge gained. It's been amazing. And I've seen so many other people that I've studied Arabic with, both at the university or in Jordan, or even in Washington, D.C. as well, go on to a really diverse set of careers that have been really incredible to watch, and how successful they are, from business to journalism to working for the government in various capacities, to even being a doctor in Palestine. Yeah, there's just so much you can do. And, before I do turn it over to Chris, while I am here advocating for Arabic, I also just encourage, if it's not an opportunity for you, to look at any language that you have available, because it's not always just about the language itself. It's really about understanding the culture and the people, and that can go so far in terms of finding your career and working in a career, because understanding different cultures and how to operate in different cultures, how to communicate with people from different cultures, whether it be in their language or in English, that is so important and key to when you're working in a career that has an international focus. And if you have that skill and that knowledge, you have a leg up on people who don't. And it's really important. And so I really hope that if you do have the opportunity to take any language, whether it be Spanish or French or German or anything like that, just take a chance and go for it. Even if it feels too hard, even if you feel like you're never going to become fluent, that is so okay. It just, being able to, like I said, know the region, know the culture, know the people, know how to interact. That's going to get you really far. And I hope that my brief little insight can be a little helpful in that. So sorry if I went a little over, but that's my very quick spiel. So hopefully that was what you're looking for there, Chris.
Oh, that's outstanding, Craig. Thanks so much for kind of opening the door here, as you said, and giving us some insight into how it's worked for you. I'll just say quickly, we are joined by the students of Bozeman High School, some of the sharpest and brightest and most engaged high school students here in Montana. So if you all have any questions for Craig and other guests, please chat them in, stay on mute. I'll get your questions and ask Craig. And until I get some of those questions from Bozeman High School, Craig, I just wanted to point out that the description of your career and how it's progressed over the years is a great example of something that we're trying to bring out this week, which is an international career isn't necessarily this thing that you are a diplomat living overseas doing international relations. In fact, there are internationalist aspects of all kinds of careers, and not only that, as you well described, but there is careers in which you can live outside of the United States, you can live inside of the United States, in North Carolina, in Montana, or you can do both, traveling back and forth. So there isn't kind of one conception of what is an international job or career. And I think that that's really important. But one thing there, Craig, is you mentioned how important travel was to you when you went to Jordan. Not everybody has the opportunity, and oftentimes it can seem a bit daunting. It can seem a bit, we can be uncertain of ourselves in terms of traveling to new places, to meet new people, to experience new cultures. I wonder if you might give us some advice on maybe how you did it, or how you think about going out into the world, engaging different peoples, different cultures, and how you've done it.
Yeah, I can speak a lot to that. I've actually, I've even gone back to where I went to school, went to Davidson College to actually kind of talk about that as well, particularly with the Middle East, because a lot of folks are just kind of innately afraid to go there. And understandably so, because of the depictions and what they've seen in the media since pretty much since September 11th. But in terms of being able to go there, like I said, I grew up in a rural area. I did not have the means or resources to send myself to these, to anywhere for that matter. And like I said, I had help from amazing teachers to get me there, which I'm sure, now that I know that there is a school here, that I'm sure that you guys all have as well. And I really encourage you to take advantage of those people that you have around you, to tell them what your thoughts are. Hey, I'm really interested here. Do you maybe have any ideas of anything that's out there where I could get funding or support to go? Because there are a lot of organizations that exist that want to send students abroad, whether you're high school or university students. So I really encourage you to just take a look on the internet and Google it and see what you can find. And then, maybe you never know. I got funding through my high school district to go to Washington, D.C. So maybe there are ways as a high school student to find that. And the same if you do decide to go to college. Find out what opportunities there are. Don't be afraid to go to professors who are in language departments, or go to your international studies department at the school and say, hey, I'm really interested in going here. What kind of opportunities are there? Can I find a program where it's organized for students, where you can maybe go and you feel like you're in a safe space? Because the first time I even went abroad wasn't to the Middle East. I actually studied in Edinburgh, Scotland for a semester. And I oddly enough went there for Arabic too, because I was too nervous to go to the Middle East, because I'd just been studying it for a year, Arabic for a year. I was unsure about it, still a little afraid. So I found that Edinburgh, Scotland had the strongest Arabic program in any English speaking country. And so that's how I ended up there. And I went through an organized program through Butler University. So, and that helped me feel safe as well. And that helped build my confidence in just being somewhere, being with other students that are with me. I wasn't alone. I knew that I had resources to go to. If I was unsure, I wasn't feeling comfortable, or wasn't quite sure how to interact with the culture. And even in the UK, it's very different. They speak a language of their own as well. And then, when you're going to something that might feel more foreign, say the Middle East, trying to find people who have been there, like myself or others, is a really great way to start. And just talking and asking about their experiences. Again, going to a program is always really great. Like I did, I went to a school there, to a university as well. And then when you're there, it's really hard to put yourself out there. It really is. The first time I was in Jordan, I was too nervous to. And so were most of my friends that I traveled with. But then when I went back by myself, and I had to put myself out there because I had to meet new people. Otherwise, I would have just been sitting alone in my apartment for an entire year. And I went out there, and I would go to the markets. I would go to the stores, and I would just, I'd buy some chicken, and I just try to use my horrible Arabic to someone. And as they're handing me chicken, they're laughing at me, but they are so impressed and so excited that you're trying to talk to them, that you're trying to understand them. They see this young white kid in the Middle East, and they're like, what is this guy doing here? And, you start talking to them, and they ask you, hey, would you like to come have some tea and play some dominoes with me later at this cafe? And that sounds scary to most too. But I said, you know what, why not? And I did it. And then I became best friends with the guy who sold chicken and French fries up the street. And then I met his friends. And that's really where I started to understand and feel like I was with people on the ground. And I felt like I was able to understand that human aspect, which is what's most important about going abroad, and why I advocate so much for it, is because it's that human aspect that we don't see. We read things in books, we see things on YouTube, we see them on TV, and there's that wall. And when you go there, when you go abroad, whether it be anywhere, that wall quickly comes down. And sometimes you just have to put yourself out there. And so, I really do advocate for that. It's not easy. It's still hard to do today, even as an adult. I can guarantee you that. But it's worth it. And you'll come back better for it.
That's great. Craig, it's
Yeah.
so cool to hear that, because it really echoes what Scott Osterman, the director of commerce, was talking about, the same ideas. A good measure of curiosity, a measure of adventurism, is helpful. And that ultimately it's about people, and people will surprise you at their warmth and hospitality and generosity and engagement. And so those feelings of uncertainty would be natural, but, to test them a bit and is one of the great things of the international life. Now, Craig, not surprisingly, Bozeman High has pumped in a number of questions here. So you're gonna have to answer these in a maybe abbreviated manner, if I could say, because
yeah, I get that. Yeah. Okay. I ramble, so I'm sorry,
no,
guys.
no, that's okay. Rambling is completely acceptable, but we do want to get through as many of the student questions as we can. Number one, what is the favorite country you have lived in or traveled to?
My heart's in Jordan. I live there. And the reason why I will say that, first, it has such a rich history that goes all the way back to the Roman Empire. So you're not just, you have the ability to learn and see how civilization basically developed, from then up until modern times, and watching, seeing how history and modernity come together. And that was amazing. The people were so welcoming, so friendly, and just the food's amazing. The music is great. And when you think of an authentic experience when you're in the Middle East, that's a place that has all those pieces. And not that saying that any other country in the region doesn't have, everything is authentic where you are, because that is the country, that's it. But for me, the relationships I built, the beautiful sites there are, and it really broke down a lot of misconceptions I had, because everybody thinks the Middle East is all desert, but you go to the north and it's this lush green area with mountains and agricultural farms, and then you go to the middle and it's the desert, and then you go south and these huge mountains, and then a little bit further south you have the Red Sea, and it's the Mediterranean. So you're getting all these different things too. So it was a wonderful place. But other countries such as Lebanon, Egypt, they're all amazing in their own right. So
I couldn't agree more. I had the good fortune of living in Jordan for 8 months myself. Wonderful place. Agree heartily. Next question. Did the World Cup being in Qatar affect you or the organization you work for?
It did, actually, in a number of ways. One, just to be transparent financially. We are funded through a private foundation based in Qatar. And the country pulled a lot of its resources out of everything to put it into the region. They spent over $200 billion to develop new infrastructure, to build these stadiums. And unfortunately, most other sectors suffered, including education. So that was the big one. And then there was their negative portrayal of the country. And there's no shying away from it in terms of the labor issues and the negative press surrounding the country bribing itself to get the World Cup there in of itself. And so having to talk about that with people and be real about it, for sure. It's been like that for years, to be honest with you, having been there for 8 years. It's not something that's new. I'm personally grateful it's over. It was a great World Cup. But it's nice that the country is moving on, but it also, I will say, it did a lot of good for the country in of itself, because it brought a lot of those issues to light, and you can't shy away from them anymore. And I'm really grateful to see a lot of the changes that happen on the ground as a result of that too. So, and give you my email after this, and if you have any more questions regarding that, I'm happy to talk to you as well.
Very good. Thanks for that, Craig. Here's a great question. What is your favorite word in Arabic?
My favorite word in Arabic, it's going to be the silliest word. It's called dajaj, and that means chicken. Just because every time I would say that word, my wife would crack up. So it's just a little inside joke between us. And then my other one would be kreik, which means shovel. And the reason that is because everybody in the Middle East has a really hard time pronouncing Craig because of the way that the alphabet is. So a lot of people would call me Kreik. So I was known as Shovel for a very long time. So
love that one, Mr. Shovel.
Yeah.
Okay. Throughout the countries that speak Arabic, were there any differences in the language or culture that stood out particularly?
Yes. So I don't have a couple weeks to talk to you about this, but I'll just so there's two different types of Arabic. There's written Arabic and there's spoken Arabic. Written Arabic is formal. It's what you would see in the media. It derives from the Quran. And so again, you can email me about it. I'm happy to go into or send you some links. And the spoken Arabic is where things get a little crazy and where Arabic education has developed so much, because when I went there, I only knew written Arabic. So when I would talk to people in that, they would be like, what are you saying? I don't understand anything you're saying. Or they'd be like, oh, your Arabic's better than mine, but then we couldn't talk to each other. And so every country has its own dialect, and that derives from its history and unfortunately colonialism, and the countries that actually sort of controlled those regions for a long time. And so within each country, there are also different dialects. So for example, in the north of Jordan, they speak differently than they do in the south of Jordan. The way that women and men actually pronounce certain letters is actually different too. So I can give you a very brief example to say coffee in written Arabic is qahwa. In Jordan, most men would say gahwa. They say the pa would be a ga, and women would say ahwa because the pa would turn into a for women. When you go to Egypt, they speak Egyptian Arabic. None of the words are the same. The dialect is completely different. So if I only knew Jordanian Arabic and went to Egypt, I might not even be able to communicate with that person. And the same goes for Morocco. They speak a mix of French and Arabic. Lebanon, they actually speak, because they were colonized by France after World War II. Their language is actually a mixture of Arabic, French, and English. So they say merci when they say thank you. They say ciao when they say goodbye. So it's crazy, but it's also what makes the language so beautiful because it's so dynamic and diverse.
That's outstanding. Now, Craig, you touched on this one, but I wonder if you might say a few more words. This is a really interesting question, and one that's on a lot of people's minds. How accepting were the people in the Middle East when you arrived? Can you tell us a little bit about, how you were received and how did that make you feel?
I have never been to a place where people have been more warm and inviting. A core part, probably the most prominent part of Arab culture is hospitality. I was welcomed with open arms, and everyone was so grateful that I was there and that I was there to learn about them and be with them. The amount of times that I was invited in by strangers for tea, for dinner, I can't even count. When I would travel to, I spent a month in Palestine in the West Bank, and that might be a place where most people would think, oh, an American would not be accepted. When I would tell people from America, they would give me a hug and they'd say, thank you for coming here and seeing us. I never paid for a thing while I was there. The people there, I don't think I ever had a negative experience with anyone for being American. And that was even where, and I'll tell you a really funny story real quick. I went to Lebanon for a month as well. I had lots of breaks in my school, and I went to Lebanon, and I went to the north of Lebanon, which is known to be an area where Hezbollah, which I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but they're designated as a terrorist organization by the US. It's where they're based. And I was really nervous going there, to be honest. So when I went there, the first thing I said to someone was, they asked me where I was from, and I said I was from Germany. Because I'm kind of German. Most of my family's from Germany. So I said it in Arabic. And then the guy said, oh, sprechen Sie Deutsch? And he started trying to talk to me in German. And I was like, oh man, gig's up, And I said, oh, I want to speak in Arabic only. And then he was like, you're not German. I said, no, I'm American. And he was like, why'd you tell me you're German? And he gave me a hug and he said, welcome to Lebanon. So, and I was even on a bus with guys from Hezbollah, just because they were there, and they did not care that I was American. They didn't see me as the great Satan or the enemy. They saw me as a friend, and we chatted about life. And so, so there's a long explanation, but I really, that's just, hospitality is how I would define the Middle East. And I felt that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I'll echo that quickly, Craig. I lived and worked overseas for nearly 25 years, and most of that time was in Islamic or Muslim countries around the world, and I experienced the very same extraordinary hospitality wherever I went. And so that's something that all Americans should know and be aware of. It's quite a beautiful and an extraordinary part of a very rich culture.
Yeah, and
This
it
is,
doesn't, oh, sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt, but
please
it
go,
doesn't
please
mean
go.
there aren't cultural differences that are hard to navigate as well, that can make things different, and difficult to navigate with people that, it's good to know before you go in, so you don't, and you don't insult someone, or you don't end up in a conversation you don't want to be with as well. So it's not always, this wonderful thing, right? You have to understand that there are people too, right? So if someone came in, they could also say something to you that could kind of change the dynamic. But I also want to just clarify that as well, that it's, when you go somewhere, it is still the real world. It's not just like, this bubble of hospitality as well. So there are a lot of cultural differences that you do have to navigate as well. I just think that's always really important to note. So I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's a great point. Thanks for adding that in, Craig. This is a good question to end on. It comes from a student in Bozeman, but I was going to ask you the same thing. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about skills. That might be language skills. You've touched on that a bit. That might be certain academic fields. That might be certain interpersonal skills or characteristics. When it comes to looking for academic opportunities, many of the people watching here are high school students, or
Okay.
maybe future job opportunities. So, Craig, from your perspective, what are some things that our viewers can keep in mind in terms of their skill set?
Yeah, I mean, so there are hard and soft skills, right? So there are things that, and I'm looking at it from a professional perspective and thinking about that. I have worked with a number of folks that have come right out of college, and honestly, where you are in high school and outside of college, a 4-year difference, you're going to grow a lot, but there are, it's a different world when you're not in school, and so a lot of those hard skills. I really recommend you learn how to use Excel. That's the first thing I'm going to tell anybody who wants a job is learn how to use Microsoft Excel to the fullest extent that you can. And I always tell everybody that, because it's always a steep learning curve for folks, because you don't use it in college. You write a lot. And so writing is great. But there are a lot of other things that you have to do on a day-to-day basis. In terms of, like in my job, I do a lot of financial management. So looking at numbers, and I have to use Excel for that. A lot of data analysis, working on your communicative skills, whether that be in English or in a foreign language. That's very important. Understanding how to conduct yourself professionally, knowing when and when not to. And learning how to speak with different people from all walks of life. Now, I know the demographic of Montana. I know where I came from. I interacted with a lot of folks that looked like myself. And so when you go out to the world, everybody doesn't look like you, and they don't come from the same place. They could come from anywhere. And so learning how to communicate with people from diverse backgrounds, from diverse cultures. That is one of the hardest things that I've found to do, and one of the most rewarding things as well, because the hardest part of any job is not the job itself, but it's the people that you work with, and being able to navigate relationships. It's complicated and it's hard because we're all people, right? And so I always tell folks that, especially kids that are in my neighborhood, for example, that are also in high school, and they ask me similar questions because I'm the youngest adult in our neighborhood. And in terms of language, I think I would also kind of understand that even if you do learn language, you might not always use it professionally. And I think I mentioned earlier, and I'm not sure if you guys are online, that it's not always just about the language, but it's about understanding how to work and operate within a different culture and with different peoples. And so, for example, when I worked for the State Department, I was really supposed to conduct all my business in English, even though I was speaking with people who are more comfortable speaking in Arabic. And did I always do that? Absolutely not. But so there's also that as well. So that expectation that, oh, okay, I learned Arabic or I learned Spanish or French, I'm fluent in it and I'm going to use it. Setting that expectation out for yourself too can also be really frustrating. So I also just kind of, let people know that. And when you see job, oh, they're offline, but that's okay. Like hopefully see us. But even if you see a job description, when you look at that and you see X preferred, don't let that scare you. If you're, you've been exposed to French, or you've been exposed to French culture, Arabic culture, don't let that fluency in French scare you away from applying for that job or trying to get it. Because if you say, I've studied French, I've been to France, I've studied Arabic, I've been to the Middle East, that's going to go really far away. So don't let anything like that ever scare you away from applying for a job, because your international experience, your exploration of the language, the fact that you have tried and you cared goes a really long way to employers. And so always take the shot when you're looking for a job. Don't ever be afraid to apply to something because you think that you don't tick all those boxes, because I guarantee you, when someone looks at your resume, when someone actually speaks with you in a room, those little boxes will fly out the window. And so just if I could leave on that note, it's just, don't be afraid, put yourself out there. It's hard, it's not comfortable, but I promise you it'll take you a long way in life, professionally, and also personally. And so yeah, I encourage you to all reach out to me if you can. You have my email address. Look at qfi.org. I'm there. Reach out at any time if you have any career questions about the Middle East or Arabic. I'm always available and I'm happy to speak at any time. And so, yeah, thanks for having me and listening to my little spiel and ramble for the past 45 minutes. So
This was outstanding, Craig. Thank you for sharing a bit of your world, your profession, and some insight into how our students can think about an international career. Again, whether that is here in Montana, whether that's within the United States or all the way around the world. Craig's a great example of somebody who's experienced all of those things. Let me also quickly thank our very generous sponsors at the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, Allegiance, First Interstate Bank, Trail West Bank, QFI, High Stakes Foundation, and the Longview Foundation. They help us bring these and so many more programs to you. Craig Cangemi from Qatar Foundation International, thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who are watching, much more to come in about 15 minutes. We've got General Wesley Clark. He is followed by international journalist extraordinaire Matt Volfs. And then finally today, we've got the executive director of the Marine and Mike Mansfield Center at the University of Montana, Dina Mansour, who's also going to give us some very unique insights from her own career. And this continues nonstop, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week. Be sure to join us. If not, check us out on the YouTube channel. Craig, thanks again, my friend. You be well.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.